I didn't wake up one day fluent, confident and fearless. I woke up ordinary, uncertain and tired, but I still showed up. Every single day, I made a quiet decision. I would choose consistency over comfort. Comfort told me to stay silent, to avoid embarrassment, to wait until I felt ready. Consistency asked me to speak anyway, and I listened to consistency. I practiced English at home when no one was watching, when no applause was coming, when mistakes felt louder than progress. I spoke to the walls, to the mirror, to my own reflection that didn't always believe in me yet. Some days my voice shook. Some days I repeated the same sentence 10 times and still got it wrong. But I didn't stop, because stopping would have been easier, and easy never changed anyone's life. There were moments when comfort whispered, "Skip today, one day won't matter." But I learned that one day always matters. One skip day quietly becomes a habit, and habits shape futures. So even on the hardest days, I read aloud for 5 minutes, listened to one short audio, spoke one paragraph. It wasn't grand, it wasn't perfect, it was consistent. And consistency has a strange magic. It works even when you don't feel it working. Weeks passed, then months, and suddenly the words didn't feel so heavy on my tongue. My fear didn't disappear, but it stopped controlling me. I realized I wasn't practicing to be flawless, I was practicing to be free. Comfort keeps you safe, but it also keeps you small. Consistency stretches you, challenges you, sometimes exhausts you, but it grows you. At home in silence, without validation, I built discipline. And discipline did what motivation never could. Motivation comes and goes, discipline stays. Every day I showed up, I was voting for the person I wanted to become. Not tomorrow, not someday, today. Slowly, my English improved, yes, but something deeper changed too. I began trusting myself. I learned that if I could keep a promise to myself in private, I could stand strong in public. So if you are waiting to feel comfortable before you begin, let me tell you this. Growth does not live in comfort. Show up on the days you feel tired, doubtful, and unready, because those are the days that change everything. Choose consistency, and one day, comfort will follow you where confidence lives. I didn't wait for perfect resources to begin. I didn't wait for the best course, the right teacher, or the ideal environment. I looked at what I had and I started there. What I had was my voice, my time, my willingness, and a small corner of my home where I could try without being judged. What I lacked was confidence, fluency, and sometimes even courage. But I learned something powerful. Focusing on what you lack keeps you stuck, while using what you have moves you forward. I used my mirror as my first audience. I spoke to myself even when my pronunciation felt awkward. I read simple sentences aloud, slowly, patiently, again and again. I used my phone to listen, pause, repeat, and record my own voice, even when I didn't like how it sounded. I didn't have fancy tools, but I had determination. And determination, when used daily, becomes a tool more powerful than any book or class. Every small effort mattered because it was mine. There were days when comparison tried to steal my progress. I saw others speaking fluently, confidently, and I felt behind. But I reminded myself that they started somewhere too. I stopped measuring my beginning against someone else's middle. Instead, I asked one simple question each day. Did I practice today? Not perfectly, just honestly. And when the answer was yes, I celebrated quietly and moved forward, using what I had also taught me gratitude. My home became my practice room. My mistakes became lessons. My limitations became reasons to try harder, not excuses to quit. I learned new words while cooking, practiced sentences while cleaning, and thought in English during the quiet moments of the day. Progress didn't come from having more. It came from using what was already in my hands with intention and respect. When you wait for everything to be ready, you delay your growth. When you begin with what you have, you discover that you already have enough. The moment I stopped saying I can't because I don't have, and started saying I will with what I have, my journey changed. Confidence didn't arrive suddenly. It was built slowly from effort stacked on effort, day after day. So, if you feel limited, now, remember this. Your starting point is not your weakness, it's your power. Use what you have, begin where you are, and watch how far you can go. For a long time, I was afraid of mistakes. Every wrong word felt like a failure. Every pause felt like proof that I wasn't good enough. I thought mistakes were something to hide, something to be ashamed of. So I stayed quiet more than I should have. But silence didn't make me better. It only made my fear stronger. One day I realized something had to change. If I wanted to grow, I had to stop fighting my mistakes and start learning from them. The first time I allowed myself to speak without overthinking, I made plenty of errors. My grammar wasn't perfect, my pronunciation wasn't smooth, and sometimes my sentences didn't land the way I wanted. But instead of stopping, I listened. I noticed where I stumbled. I corrected myself gently. I tried again, and slowly mistakes stopped feeling like enemies attacking my confidence. They became teachers, showing me exactly where I needed to improve. Every mistake carried information. It told me what to practice next, what to repeat, what to understand better. When I said a word wrong, I didn't punish myself. I practiced it again. When I forgot a sentence, I didn't feel embarrassed. I rebuilt it. I learned that perfection doesn't teach you much, but mistakes teach you everything. They are not signs of weakness, they are signs of effort. I also learned that fear grows when you avoid it. The more I avoided speaking, the bigger my fear became. But the more I spoke and made mistakes, the smaller that fear felt. Each mistake I survived made me braver for the next one. I stopped asking, "What if I'm wrong?" and started asking, "What can I learn from this?" That shift changed everything, not just my English, but my mindset. At home, in my safe space, I gave myself permission to be a learner, not a performer. I laughed at my errors instead of judging them. I reminded myself that every fluent speaker once sounded exactly like this, uncertain, imperfect, and learning. Growth didn't come from avoiding mistakes, it came from walking straight through them. So if you are afraid of getting it wrong, remember this. Mistakes are not stopping you, fear is. Let your mistakes teach you, shape you, and strengthen you, because every time you get it wrong and keep going, you are getting closer to getting it right. I used to believe that every mistake was a step backward. One wrong word could silence me for hours, sometimes days. I carried the fear of being judged, misunderstood, or laughed at, and that fear made mistakes feel like enemies standing in my way. But with time, I understood something deeply important. Mistakes were never there to hurt me. They were there to guide me. The moment I changed how I looked at them, my learning changed too. When I began practicing English at home, I made mistakes constantly. I mixed tenses, mispronounced simple words, and forgot sentences halfway through. At first, it was frustrating. But instead of stopping, I stayed with the discomfort. I listened closely to where I went wrong. I repeated the words slowly. I corrected myself without anger. And in that quiet, patient process, mistakes started teaching me exactly what I needed to know. They showed me my weak spots, not to shame me, but to strengthen me. I realized that mistakes only feel powerful when you run away from them. When you face them, they lose their control. Every error became a lesson I couldn't get from silence. I learned more from one wrong sentence spoken out loud than from 10 perfect sentences I never dared to say. Mistakes gave me experience, and experience gave me confidence. Not overnight, but steadily. There was also freedom in accepting mistakes. I stopped trying to sound perfect and started trying to be honest. Honest effort matters more than perfect performance. I allowed myself to be a learner, not an expert. And once I did that, my fear softened. I stopped waiting for approval and started focusing on progress. Each mistake I corrected became proof that I was moving forward. I also understood that no one becomes fluent without sounding foolish at first. Every strong voice was once uncertain. Every confident speaker once struggled in silence. I wasn't behind, I was simply on my way. And every mistake I made was a sign that I was brave enough to try. So if mistakes are holding you back today, change how you see them. Let them teach you, not terrify you. Because the moment you stop fearing mistakes is the moment learning truly begins. For a long time, I believed confidence was something you had to feel before you could act. I thought one day I would wake up brave, fluent, and ready to speak without fear. That day never came. What came instead were opportunities I almost missed because I was waiting to feel confident. Then I learned a truth that changed everything. Confidence does not come first, action does. The first times I spoke English out loud, my voice was unsure and my heart raced. I didn't feel confident at all, but I spoke anyway. I practiced even when my hands felt restless and my mind was full of doubt. Each small action felt uncomfortable, but it also felt honest. I wasn't pretending to be confident. I was becoming confident through action. With every sentence I spoke, something shifted inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, but steadily. Confidence is not built in silence. It grows in movement, in effort, in repetition. Every time I acted despite fear, I proved something to myself: I can do hard things. That proof mattered more than any compliment. I didn't wait to feel ready. I practiced until readiness slowly found me. Some days progress was invisible, but I showed up anyway. And over time, the fear that once controlled my voice began to loosen its grip. I realized that confidence is simply trust in yourself, and trust is built by keeping promises to yourself. When I said I would practice and then actually did it, I strengthened that trust. When I spoke even while feeling afraid, I showed myself courage. Confidence wasn't a gift given to me. It was something I earned through consistency and effort. There were moments when doubt still appeared, reminding me of how far I had to go. But I stopped letting doubt decide my actions. I learned that courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward with fear beside you. Every time I chose action over hesitation, my confidence grew a little stronger. So if you're waiting to feel confident before you begin, remember this: confidence is built after you act, not before. Take the step, speak the words, try again, and confidence will meet you on the way. For the longest time, I believed my voice had to be perfect before it could be shared. I thought I needed better words, better pronunciation, better confidence. Only then would I be worthy of being heard. So I kept my thoughts inside. I silenced myself before anyone else could. But one day I asked myself a difficult question. If I don't speak, who loses? And the answer was clear. It was me. My ideas, my experiences, my story were staying locked away, not because they lacked value, but because I lacked belief. I slowly began to understand that a voice doesn't become valuable after it sounds fluent. It is valuable because it carries truth. My English didn't need to be perfect to matter. It needed to be real. I had something to say, and saying it, even imperfectly, was better than staying silent forever. When I accepted that, something inside me softened. I stopped trying to sound impressive and started trying to be understood. That shift gave my voice strength. Believing my voice deserved to be heard didn't happen all at once. It grew every T. I spoke despite fear. Every time I finished a sentence, instead of stopping halfway. Every time I chose expression over silence. I reminded myself that communication is not about showing intelligence. It is about sharing connection. And connection doesn't demand perfection. It asks for courage. At home, while practicing alone, I spoke as if someone was listening. Not because they were, but because one day they would be. I respected my own voice enough to train it, strengthen it, and trust it. I realized that when you believe your voice matters, you treat practice as preparation, not punishment. You stop apologizing for speaking and start owning your words. I also learned that the world doesn't hear voices that hide. Opportunities don't come knocking for silence. Growth requires expression. When I finally believed my voice deserved space, I stopped shrinking myself to fit fear. I stood taller in my words, even when they trembled. And with each use, my voice became clearer, not just in English, but in confidence. So if you are holding back today, thinking your voice is not ready, remember this: your voice becomes stronger by being used. Speak, even if it shakes. Speak, even if it's imperfect. Because the moment you believe your voice deserves to be heard is the moment it begins to change your life.